Since 2019, the Alberta Institute for Wildlife Conservation has taken in 15 injured and orphaned black bear cubs. Caring for these bears is hard work. They require lots of food, exercise, and a large amount of space. And all the while, our staff need to make sure that these bears don't start associating humans with a free meal. While people have been raising and releasing orphaned black bear cubs for decades, it's only recently that we've developed good, data-driven practices for rehabilitation. Protocols for rehabilitating black bear cubs in Alberta were finalized in 2018. In 2019, the Alberta Institute for Wildlife Conservation received our black bear rehabilitation permits. Since then, we have taken in and released 14 baby black bears. This is a 100% success rate. While black bears are not an at-risk species in Alberta, human intervention and rehabilitation can still make a difference to their populations. Black bears are long to live and slow to reproduce, meaning that each individual saved has a larger than normal impact on the population as a whole. Many bear cubs arrive at AIWC due to human-wildlife conflict. Sadly, mother bears will abandon their dens if disturbed during the winter, leaving the cubs behind. Cubs can also be orphaned due to incidents with vehicles or with hunters. Black bear cubs are completely reliant on their mother for the first 8 months of life and require intervention if they are going to survive after being orphaned. Here at AIWC, we feel that rehabilitating these injured and orphaned black bear cubs will help to balance the scales and get these cubs back to the wild where they belong. For these cubs to have the best chance in the wild, they need expert caregivers and specialized accommodations.
We start them on a bear formula, and then we slowly progress them from that formula when they first come in into eating kind of like an oatmeal mash. And then from there, once the seasons kind of pick up, when they would naturally be out and about with their mom, we would then start introducing berries and different things like that throughout June and July. And once they're on fruit, then we put them onto their full amounts of protein once we wean them off of the formula. And then we slowly up the protein until their full amount is getting about 4 pounds of food at each feeding. About 50% of that is fruit and berries, and then 25% veg, and then 25% protein. Typically, like produce alone, I was probably feeding, like there are 3 cubs this summer, probably about like $100 to $150 a day. They eat so much, especially during August. They actually go through hyperphagia, where we double the amount of food that they're getting, so they just eat as much as they want. We underwire the enclosure a few feet to make sure they can't dig out. We have a really high, elevated fencing in the enclosure with about 4 or 5 feet of metal on the top so that they cannot physically climb out that way. We also do put an electric fence around the outskirts to deter them from wanting to climb up the sides. One of the major things that we give them is a lot of greenery. So they love fresh browse. We cut branches down all the time and give them big branches there to play on. We will give them leaf piles in the fall. So I'd put big piles of leaf and different pieces of browse in there, and they dig around and roll around in there. They love water features. So we built water features into their enclosures. They have large tubs that they can swim in. Even for the older bears, they love it too. So this is one of their favorite things. They love running water, playing with it. So habituation is when an animal lacks their natural fear of humans. It's a big issue when it comes to bears in the wild, if they're around your garbage or anything like that. So that's why we're really, really careful about habituation and making sure that when they see us, they see a scary person that they don't want to be around. Throughout their care, especially when they're really young, we keep it down to 2 caregivers only. We try to keep the one main caregiver who does them. So whoever's on will do them for the 5 days of the week that they're on shift. And then we normally have a secondary caregiver that's in with them often. And then once it gets to around August, we introduce a 3rd caregiver, and that caregiver is just a scary person. One of the biggest things that bears actually habituate on is voices. We don't talk at all around them, and we make sure that nobody goes around the enclosure or is talking around the enclosure, because that is actually worse than multiple faces. One of the biggest things we do with them as well is we wear jumpsuits so that we all look the exact same when we're going in, as well as we wear masks to kind of cover the rest of our face.
For all bear cub patients that arrive at AIWC, it eventually becomes time to return to the wild. During the release process, we take many precautions to make sure they and our staff members remain safe. Cubs that come to us in spring are released during the fall months so that they can go straight into hibernation. Cubs that arrive later in the year are usually coming in due to being orphaned and not having enough fat to survive the winter on their own. They are cared for at AIWC until late June, after the Alberta Spring Bear Hunt.
So typically about a month before their release, we do a pre-release sedation and exam with our veterinarian. So we put them under sedation, we give them a full physical exam, we tend to take blood work, we listen to everything and make sure everything looks normal, make sure their fur is coming in normally, and then we can treat them with any antiparasitic if we feel that they need it pre-release. We let Fish and Wildlife know, and then Fish and Wildlife, they typically find the release location, they prep everything for it and give us the date for release. Then on day of release, we do pretty much the exact same thing. We sedate them, do another full physical just to make sure they're fine to go. And then Fish and Wildlife comes in, collars them, we tag them and microchip them before they go as well.
Ideally, we would love it for all black bear cubs to spend their entire lives in the wild. Unfortunately, while human-wildlife conflict exists, we will always have black bear cubs who are injured or orphaned and in need of our help. If you'd like to help us care for black bears here at the Alberta Institute for Wildlife Conservation, you can sponsor one of our current patients. Simply head to our website at www.aiwc.ca or check the link in the description. By purchasing a sponsorship of a current patient, you'll receive a certificate telling that patient's story, a beautiful color photograph of that exact animal, as well as a tax receipt for the value of your donation. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Alberta Wildlife Insider.